So the Republicans are on the warpath on this issue of texts between two people at the FBI who were part of Mueller's investigation in the beginning, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. First of all, it should be noted that the FBI says that there's 5 months of texts missing. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable when the CIA loses the torture tapes where they tortured people and they had it on tape and they had a court order to retain that evidence and they just trashed it. And so I don't know why or how the FBI lost these texts, but it's not an acceptable situation. So now, having said that, there's a piece of information shared by a Republican senator here, which I don't think helps their cause, but of course they're going to twist that into trying to appear that way anyway. So let's give you the context here. I'm gonna go to law and crime. FBI agent Peter Strzok was dismissed from special counsel Robert Mueller's team after messages he sent that demonstrated a bias against President Trump. So just to remind you of the background here. And by the way, yes, he was dismissed. The minute they found out about the text messages where he was saying that he doesn't like Trump, he was off the team like that. Well, no, not good enough. Well, if it was a deep state plan, why did they kick him off the team? Why don't they just let him continue? Okay. In one of the messages though, Strzok apparently wrote, "You and I both know the odds are nothing about this investigation coming up with something. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern that there's nothing big there." Whoa, that's super interesting. I thought this guy was part of the deep state conspiracy, according to the right wing, to make sure that he gets Trump. But in text messages from back then, he writes to Lisa Page, "I don't think there was anything to the Trump investigation." Well, then how is he part of a secret cabal? Okay, more from Law and Crime. They say these texts, of course, came well before news came out about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Russian attorney with hopes of getting dirt on Hillary Clinton, and prior to the guilty pleas of Michael Flynn and George Papadopoulos for providing false statements to federal agents. So you shouldn't take at face value that he thought there was nothing there about the investigation today. That was before the investigation began. But here's the guy who's supposed to be plotting this whole thing against Donald Trump. Why is he saying in private, "I don't think there's a big deal there"? If he was going to do a hatchet job on Trump, wouldn't he be saying, "Oh my God, it's a giant big deal and we're gonna go get him"? Instead, he says the opposite. But it doesn't matter. Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican from Wisconsin, twists it and says this. Still, Johnson believes that this is evidence that the investigation has a political agenda. Well, if it's evidence that the investigation has a political agenda, well, then I guess the political agenda is they did not intend to get Donald Trump. The guy that you think is most guilty wrote a text message saying, "I don't think Donald Trump is guilty." Wow, what a plot to undermine him. Ladies and gentlemen, you got him. No, he went in, apparently, even though he really doesn't like Trump, and that is clear in the text messages. He really doesn't like Trump, but he goes in and with an attitude of not only an open mind, but one that actually favors Trump in this investigation. But there's nothing the Republicans can't twist. So then we go to Fox News, of course. Lou Dobbs is somehow still on television. I think it's Fox Business, but he never talks about business. He just talks about conspiracy theories, etc. So he's going to then say, "Okay, great, let's use this as an excuse of a purge of law enforcement so that we can put the lawless people in charge and we could, hey, anybody got a brown shirt? Anybody got a brown shirt? Lou Dobbs would like one." Let's watch.
The Justice Department and the FBI, again, two agents, an agency and a department sworn to preserve the national security, violating law and order and the Constitution, and denying Congress the fulfillment of its responsibility, which is to oversee those two organizations. This is reprehensible. What do you think can be done the most expediently to preserve evidence and to bring people who are in positions of authority to bay to prevent further corruption?
So now, if you started with, hey, they shouldn't have gotten rid of the text messages or should have made a bigger effort to keep them, well, then as I explained in the beginning, I'm with you. You're outraged by that. I don't mind that. I mind it. Fine, of course, you're outraged by it. God bless, right? But then when you take the extra step and say, we need to bring them to bay, these political opponents of ours, okay? Now, you just found a text message of the guy saying, "I don't think Trump is guilty." It doesn't matter. Fire anyone investigating Donald Trump. He sounded John Bolton. John Bolton's a maniac. He's the guy who said we should get rid of 10 floors of the UN building. And then, of course, Bush made him a UN ambassador. He couldn't even get Bolton to agree. He's like, Bolton's like, well, they are the FBI. I mean, I think, don't we need them? Right? And so Lou Dobbs is going to double down.
The rank and file, this is not an issue.
Yeah.
The people who lead the Department of Justice and the FBI are corrupt, they're crooked, and they need to be removed forthwith.
So now we're talking about removing the heads of the FBI, their leadership, and removing the leadership at the Department of Justice. Who would want to remove all the people in charge of enforcing the law? The people that have either already broken the law or are interested in further breaking the law. This is exactly how fascism begins. Those are political enemies. They're investigating our law breaking, well then we just round them up. And on Fox, they've already suggested not only firing them, but arresting them. Just Lou Dobbs. You know, it's interesting. Trump has been clarifying because Lou Dobbs has been hiding that brown shirt in his closet for all these years. But the minute he gets a chance, all of a sudden he's like, oh, it's time to put it on? Yes, round up our political enemies. Not in America, not according to our Constitution. We're supposed to have rule of law and no one is above the law, including the president. And if you don't respect that, you're not a true American. And look at these Republicans who pretended for all these years to be for law and order, now talking about firing everybody at the FBI and the Justice Department because they're investigating their dear, beloved, crooked, corrupt leader, Donald Trump. They sicken me. What you just watched was one of the videos that we do today, but we actually do a whole 2-hour show every single day. It's a podcast. You could watch it in video or listen to it as audio. You can download it, you can stream it, and you get it completely ad-free if you could become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.